Welcome everybody, and thank you for tuning in to this month's webinar for busy lawyers. These are monthly webinars that we put on to bring you practical information. That's information you can put to use right away in your practice. And the presentations are about 20 to 30 minutes, so they don't take up a lot of your time, but they are packed with valuable information. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Linda Pepe. She is a legal marketing expert with a results-driven focus. As Director of Marketing at Mintz Levin, she launched a new brand and website, created their social media presence, and developed their marketing analytics program. At Greenberg Tribe, she built the creative services team from the ground up, creating and implementing the firm's visual brand. And as Director of Business Development at Murtha Cullina, she developed their Thought Leadership Initiative. Linda began her career in the advertising industry, creating results-oriented print and broadcast while working as Senior Art Director at one of the top agencies in New England. Linda has been a frequent speaker on social media and content marketing at conferences around the country. She and her teams have won more than 40 awards for results and creativity, and she was recognized by the Mass Bar Association and the Massachusetts Lawyers Weekly with their Excellence in Law, Excellence in Marketing Award. So we are very lucky to have Linda today. Before I turn it over to her, I'd just like to let you know that we're going to have time at the end to answer all questions. So what you should do is write your questions right into the chat box. You can pull up the chat box on your screen, write your question in, and then at the end of Linda's presentation, I will give her the questions and she will answer them all. We have plenty of time. So that's what I've got, and I'm going to turn it over to Linda now.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome to Behavioral Science Tips and Tricks for Legal Marketing. I expect this is going to be a very interesting session. My name, as you just heard, my name is Linda Pepe. I'm an award-winning Chief Marketing Officer and Director of Marketing with a strong background in design who's experienced in strategic direction, all aspects of marketing, and business development. I've built marketing and creative teams from the ground up, guiding and mentoring while focusing on results. I'm also a content marketing social media specialist who's spoken at conferences around the country. My early years, as you heard, were spent in the advertising agency world, learning about response rates and analytics long before they were industry buzzwords. And I have worked with large corporations and large law firms, small startups, and just everything in between. Now, when I was asked to do a webinar for this organization, I thought carefully about what the subject should be. In the past, I've spoken about topics such as LinkedIn, content marketing, blogs and websites, videos, direct mail, social media. But while I think all of those are really great subjects, they've been discussed many, many times over. And I wanted to present on a new topic that you would find uniquely useful. So with both thanks and apologies to my friend Nancy Harhut, who's the real expert in behavioral marketing. Today I'm going to be talking about how to take advantage of behavioral science in your legal marketing. So let's start with the basics. Just what is behavioral science and how does it apply to marketing? Simply put, it's the study of how people behave, specifically of how we make decisions and why we do what we do. Social scientists have found that humans have developed decision-making shortcuts as a way to conserve mental energy because we couldn't possibly weigh every bit of data before making a decision, or we'd never get around to making any. So we've developed some hardwired behaviors, automatic, instinctive, reflexive actions that we rely on. As a result, very often people default to these automatic behaviors, giving a matter at hand little, if any, thought. Best of all, scientific research has proven that these automatic behaviors can actually be prompted or triggered. Now, which means that if we build certain triggers into our marketing strategies and executions, we can greatly increase the likelihood that people will take the actions that we want them to take, including things like opening your emails, downloading your content, and clients choosing your services over those of your competitors. During this webinar, we're going to be talking about ways of using behavioral science concepts to help you nudge your client to make the decision that you want them to make. Now, as an aside, behavioral marketing is sometimes confused with something called neuromarketing. Neuromarketing is a newer field of marketing which uses technology to measure the impact of marketing and advertising on consumers. That utilizes methods such as eye tracking, skin response, EEGs, and MRI devices to study the brain's responses to marketing stimuli. That's not what we're doing here. We are doing behavioral marketing that's based on a ton of research. So science has shown that the human brain doesn't like to work hard. As a result, human beings have developed these decision-making shortcuts, those automatic, instinctive, reflexive behaviors. And as I mentioned, when people encounter certain situations or stimuli, they just default to those hardwired behaviors, giving them little, if any, thought. You can use this to your advantage by tapping into common decision defaults. And you can increase the likelihood that your clients will engage with your content and choose the path that you would like them to take. Now, there are many, many behavioral marketing techniques. One of them, the first technique I'd like to tell you about, is social proof. Social proof is the idea that when people are uncertain of what decision to make, they often look to others, especially others like them, and follow their lead. Now, for example, if you're speaking with a prospective client, and I know this seems pretty obvious, but if you're speaking with a prospective client, mentioning the number of other clients in situations similar to that prospective client's situation that the firm has already helped would be a very, very good thing to do. This is because people often make a decision based on social norms. Now, client testimonials are another great example of social proof, and they should definitely be included with your materials and in your website whenever you can. 72% of customers said that positive online reviews made them trust a company more, and 88% said that they actually trust online reviews as much as personal recommendations. Now, word of mouth recommendations, of course, they're also considered an example of social proof. When a colleague recommends a product, clients are much more likely to take their endorsement seriously. Now, the next technique I'd like to discuss is the magnetic middle. Let me ask you a question. Did you want to be just like everyone else when you grew up? Did you strive to be average? Probably not. But research has found that most of us don't really want to be too different from everyone else. We want to fit in. We actually want to be middle of the road. This middle of the road tends to be the comfort zone for most people. They like to feel that they're in the norm, and if they learn they're outside it, they'll adjust to get closer to that middle. Now, that's the power of the magnetic middle. One example of the use of magnetic middle was used to nudge members of the American Dental Association to purchase more life insurance coverage. Now, of course, the problem with marketing life insurance is that no one wants to think about the fact that they're going to die. And if you do manage to convince someone to buy a policy, they typically have little desire to go back and update it as the years pass, even though they really should. So HBT Marketing sent dentists materials with a chart that had $0 on the left, which was the least insurance someone could have, and $3 million on the right, which was the most insurance that their client offered. They also indicated how much coverage the individual dentist had, which was always left of center. Now, again, social scientists have proven that people don't like to feel as if they're lagging behind, and they don't feel comfortable on the bleeding edge, so they tend to gravitate toward the middle. They sent the chart, not thinking that each dentist would increase their coverage all the way to $3 million, but that they would move closer to that center. And that's exactly what happened. The client saw a triple-digit lift in response over the previous effort, with dentists buying more insurance. Now, this demonstrates the power of the magnetic middle, our urge to gravitate to middle ground so we can be like others, average, actually, as opposed to being significantly different. So the question is, how do you capitalize on this middle-of-the-road mindset? The secret lies in carefully considering what choices you present to your customers in your proposals. For instance, if you're offering a business package to startups and you include a low-end package at $3,000, a high-end package at $20,000, and a mid package at $10,000, you'll find, assuming they have the money, that most of those startup customers are going to gravitate toward that $10,000 mid package. So if you wanted to get more clients at the $20,000 range, you could try shifting your package options to a low range package of $10,000, a high range package of $30,000, and that mid range package at $20,000. Now, obviously, you also need to be within market range, but that you get the idea. Here's another example of the magnetic middle. At many restaurants, when offered a choice of an inexpensive bottle of wine, an expensive bottle of wine, and one in the middle, guess which one the customers choose? That's right, they choose the mid-priced option. I've got one more example for you because this technique is actually very common. Just last night, I was at the movie theater. We go to a dine-in theater where each seat has a table and the waiters will bring you your popcorn, your drinks, they actually have a full bar, and dinner that you order off a full menu. Well, last night when the check arrived, this time I realized that the tip guide at the bottom uses the magnetic middle. Now, I think most people tend to tip in the 15 to 20% range. And I looked it up, I checked. A recent study says that on average, Americans tip 16.4%. But the recommended tip percentages on my check ranged from 20% to 18% to 16%. So most people will automatically tip that middle number, the 18. And by using the magnetic middle, the theater has nudged most people to pay more. One thing to keep in mind when you're presenting choices, you want to avoid choice overload. If it's been proven that if you present too many options, it tends to have the effect of pushing people away. That's because when faced with an overwhelming number of choices, people tend to shut down and make no decision at all. Therefore, do your best to keep your choices as simple as possible. Now, another great technique is called the decoy effect. The decoy effect provides a different way to nudge people toward a more expensive option. And it's pretty clever, I think. Research has shown that when there are only two options, consumers will tend to make decisions according to their personal preferences. But when those consumers are often another strategic decoy option, they will be more likely to choose the more expensive of the two original options. There's a trick to this, though, and the trick is that the decoy option should actually not be a good choice. A great example of this is an experiment that National Geographic ran. In that test, people were offered a small bucket of popcorn for $3 or a large bucket for $7. Most people chose the small bucket. But when a decoy medium size was added at a cost of $6.50, that decoy encouraged most people to choose the large one. Here's another example. In the book Predictably Irrational, the author describes 3 subscription options from The Economist magazine. A web-only option for $59, a print-only option for $125, and a web and print option for $125. Now, at first glance, it seems like that print-only option was a mistake. Who would choose that option when you can get the web and print subscription for exactly the same price? Well, the author conducted a study and found that including the print-only option actually made a huge difference. Without that print-only option, most people chose the web option because it was cheaper. However, by including the print-only option, that helped people better compare the other two options. Because it was a similar, yet worse version of the web and print option, people could easily recognize the value of that more expensive subscription. And think about it, with each person choosing that more expensive web and print option, The Economist generated 43% more revenue. That's the power of the decoy effect. Now, for you to guide clients toward the more expensive version, you can take the same approach. By adding a similar, yet somewhat worse version of your service offering, you can influence that comparison process, and suddenly your more expensive service will become more appealing to your clients. Another helpful technique to use is called the reason why. Social scientists have found that people are more likely to do what you ask them to do if you give them a reason why. And here's the amazing thing. Research has shown that that reason doesn't really need to be wildly compelling. A social psychologist at Harvard conducted a study where she tested the impact of phrasing on people's willingness to let someone cut in front of them in line. So she ran a test with people lined up to use a copy machine. And as a part of that test, she tested 3 variations of requests to cut in line. They all started exactly the same, but ended a little bit differently. The first one was, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine?" The second one, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I have to make some copies?" The third one, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I'm in a rush?" Now, while only 70% agreed to let her cut in line when she used the first question, 90% let her cut when she used either the second or third variations with the because. Now, the takeaway from that, when asking people to do something, always include a reason. For example, as an attorney, you can't say, "because we'll win your case," but you can say, "because we'd like to help you." And you're still taking advantage of that psychological effect. Now, it's amazing to me that something so small can make such a big difference, but that's the reason why the power of why makes a big difference. Now let's talk about how to help reduce the pain of paying for your clients. Each time we purchase something, we feel a sense of pain. That's often referred to as the pain of paying. Now, we all experience that pain of paying because we're all loss adverse, and payments, like losses, are deeply unpleasant. That pain comes from 2 factors. First, how conspicuous the payment is, which in other words means that we feel more pain if we see money leaving our hands. The second is the timing of that payment, which means that we feel more pain if we pay immediately after we consume something. Considering those 2 factors, and you think about it, you can really see why a ride-sharing service like Uber revolutionized the taxi industry. In a traditional taxi ride, the payment is very conspicuous. You're sitting there, you see the meter constantly rising. Each minute evokes an increasingly painful sensation. Then at the end of the ride, the taxi driver makes you pay by cash or credit card. That's pain. So much pain. Uber is different. There's no visual meter. There's no physical payments. Everything is automatically charged to your card. So much less pain. Now, how can you take advantage of this technique? Well, credit card processing is one tactic you can use to reduce your client's pain of paying, but you can also reduce that pain in other ways too. You could also consider offering clients the option to stagger payments for services. Allowing clients to delay payment can dramatically increase their willingness to hire you. Even small delays in payments can help soften the sting of parting with their money and help remove a barrier to hiring you. Now, I have one more tip for you that involves how the firm displays fees. There's been a lot of research into the psychology of pricing. Prices that end in 9 or 99 or 95 are called charm pricing because when our brains encode numbers, they encode them so quickly that we encode the size of a number before we finish reading it. And it may seem sort of silly, but research proves that something that costs $3,999 feels less expensive than something that costs $4,000, even though it's just $1 difference. Researchers have also found that removing a comma can make your price seem lower. Take a look. Do you agree? I think I do. And research has also shown that making the $ half the size of the numbers it precedes has the effect of making that amount seem smaller. Now, behavioral scientists have proven that people, all of us, rely on decision defaults. By adding behavioral science to your marketing, you'll increase the likelihood that you'll get the response you're looking for. There are many possible behavioral science techniques that can be used in marketing. Here, I've touched on just a few of them during the session, and here are a few others. Thank you for joining me today. I wanted to make sure to acknowledge my friend Nancy Harhut, who's an amazing wealth of knowledge about all things related to behavioral science and marketing. I have an interview coming out with her shortly. If you're interested, let me know, and I'll be sure and send it your way. I really hope that you've enjoyed learning these behavioral science tips and tricks for legal marketing as much as I've enjoyed sharing them with you. This has been really fun. Let me know if you have any questions. And if you have any questions later on, feel free to reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, email me. Thank you very much.
Linda, thank you so much. This was so interesting. I want to ask you to come back to finish and tell us about the other little social cue ways to affect decision making that you weren't able to get to today. But we'll talk about that afterwards. I want to give people a little bit of a chance to put their questions up. I did come up with one that I was kind of curious about. Is there any reason to make any kinds of adjustments in these ideas based on the type of practice area someone is in?
I would say that every individual practice, everything individually that you're doing, you need to take a step back and think about it and think about what the right strategy would be and what kinds of changes would be appropriate for your practice and your clients. So in general terms, absolutely. It's not cookie cutter. I mean, it's some great ideas, but it's never cookie cutter. You want to think about your practice, you want to think about your clients and how best to target them always.
And I want to give a few more minutes just to see if anybody has any other questions and remind people that they can get in touch with you directly. You've got your email here, your website there on this slide. And also your slides will be put up. I think you sent Rachel a PDF. If not, you'll do that and it'll be up on our website with a copy of this recording so people can access it then as well. I don't see any more questions at the moment. So I'm going to thank you. This was really outstanding and interesting. You gave us so much to think about, and I am serious. There was so much. I was so curious to hear more about all the other ways that you weren't able to get to today. So thanks again for sharing your time and expertise. And I want to remind everyone that next month on September 18th, we will have Andrea Canavina talk to us about getting business done, putting productivity to work. So thank you everyone for tuning in and have a terrific weekend. See you next month. Bye-bye.